Boston's among the cities around the country going through a surge of new development. Much of that's coming online as tall buildings in the ultra-luxury category. If there are magnets for capital, they're likely game for speculation. And our guest says that kind of transaction calls for a different approach when it comes to paying taxes. We'd like to welcome the director of the program on inequality with the Institute for Policy Studies, also the author of Born on Third Base, Chuck Collins. Thank you very much for being with us, Chuck.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
First of all, why should this kind of development be treated so differently?
Well, it's sort of a recent manifestation of the extreme inequalities of wealth that we're living through. And it's a global force. It's not just old gentrification, wealthy people bidding up the cost of land and housing. This is global capital. Wealthy billionaires from around the world looking for places to park their money. And so it's having a kind of a major disruptive effect, not just on Boston, but a lot of coastal cities.
Now, another factor here is the flipping. And I remember reading about one of these tall buildings downtown, among the very tallest. And no sooner do people buy something than a year later, a little more than that, they're flipping it and making a lot of money too.
Yeah, it's important to realize these are not really homes for most of the people who own them. They are investments. They are a form of asset class. So if you're a billionaire looking out, you're thinking, I have my stocks and my bonds and I have my real estate, and that's how I diversify my wealth. And owning a couple of $6 million condos in Boston is just one of my asset classes. And I may move in it, I may hold that asset for a while as a way to preserve value, or I might speculate and sell it and turn it around. But these are not homes for most people. Most of the people in Millennium Tower don't claim a residential exemption. Fewer than a quarter of the owners there claim that they're actually going to live in that property.
What about what's been happening in other cities? I mean, New York has seen a lot of this already, and some other places have as well. What are they doing about it?
Well, in New York, Mayor de Blasio has proposed what he calls a mansion tax, which is a transfer tax, a very high-end real estate transfer tax. Say units over $2.5 million would pay a little bit higher transfer fee. Vancouver and the province of British Columbia have levied a vacancy tax. So if a property is sitting vacant for a long period of time, they have to pay a higher tax rate. And I think the model for Boston is San Francisco. San Francisco actually has implemented this high-end real estate transfer tax, and it's already generated $44 million last year, which the citizens of San Francisco are using to pay for debt-free community college and restoration of trees in the city of San Francisco. I would argue we should use the money for affordable housing, just put it right in the linkage fund and have it sort of help expand the pool of affordable housing.
This is BNN News. We're talking with Chuck Collins from the Institute for Policy Studies. Chuck, you mentioned the linkage money that has been coming from development for quite a number of years already in Boston. But if you diminish the incentives to build these ultra luxury buildings, isn't that going to eat into the linkage that you want?
I don't think so. I mean, Boston has the third hottest luxury market right now. People are building. There's more buildings coming online. There's several more in the pipeline. I think that a one-time transfer tax when a unit transfers is different than the construction linkage fees. I think those developers are still going to have plenty of incentives to build those buildings and pay into linkage, and this will be a sort of a way to capture value down the road. So I think it's a both and. I think it'll supplement the existing linkage funds.
Now, the way property taxes work in Boston is that there has to be a sort of a fundamental uniformity about them, even though there can be some kinds of adjustments. How would you make that work here with this kind of property?
Well, I would probably require some state enabling statute, but I actually think Cambridge and Somerville and maybe some other cities in Massachusetts might be interested in this idea of a high-end real estate transfer tax. So just like the Community Preservation Act, we had to get an enabling statute for that. It is essentially a luxury tax. Think of it as a luxury tax, yes, in addition to any kind of existing real estate tax.
The other thing too is a sort of scale that's involved, because you could have a real struggle getting this through, and then how much money are you really going to get from it? Is there a lot of money here that really make this worthwhile?
I think even a modest real estate transfer tax could generate tens of millions of dollars for the city of Boston. And one thing I think we should do is actually work with the city of New York and Washington, D.C. and other East Coast cities to kind of put together a package of uniform ordinances that all these cities can move in tandem, because we're all facing the same dynamics. We'll all be told, oh, the millionaires will run to your city. Where, and the one way to think about this, Chris, is this is one of the few ways we can capture trillions of dollars of hidden wealth that's being hidden around the world, because it's touching down in real property in our community. So there's tens of billions of dollars being hidden from taxing authorities around the world and from the U.S. government. This is one of the ways we can capture that. So I think it's an opportunity for big cities to have an impact on these extraordinary wealth inequalities we're living through.
I imagine one argument from the other side about these buildings, maybe former Mayor Bloomberg might have made this argument, is that there's a huge amount of wealth pouring into these buildings. It's going to trickle down. All people who can afford to even pay rent in these buildings are going to go to restaurants and theaters. Isn't that enough?
Well, no, we're happy about that aspect of the trickle down, and it's not enough. I mean, we're essentially, through what we do together as Bostonians, creating a safe haven for global capital. They're not these are Russian gangsters and Chinese billionaires and people coming from countries that don't have stable markets, functioning police departments, the amenities that Boston has. We're together as taxpayers creating that luxurious bank account for this capital. We're providing a safe haven for it. And in exchange for that, we should ask for more.
We should mention, Chuck, finally, I'm sure this sort of also flows from your book, Born on Third Base. So if people want to find a way to catch up with that, is there a way they can look for that?
Actually, I co-edit a website called inequality.org, which is a good portal for looking at these issues of inequality, including the issues in the housing market.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Chris, thank you for having me.
Chuck Collins.